We will call the September 30th, 2019 meeting of the Planning Commission to order. Rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business is approval of the August 26, 2019 meeting minutes.
Roll call.
There's motion, I'm sorry, roll call. Never mind. We'll get to that in a second. Sorry.
Bart,
Yes.
Barnett,
Yes.
Bauman,
Yes.
Bullinger, Demacus,
Yes.
Hochhalter,
Yes.
Hoop,
Here.
Larshus, Offerdahl,
Yes.
Severson, Wagonast.
Yes.
Next time I'll not cross those off before I start, and then I'll have everything in order. So now the next item of business is approval of the August 26, 2019 minutes. Motion by Keller, or Coop, I'm sorry. Do I have-
Second.
Second by Bauman. All those in favor? I'm sorry, call the roll.
Barch,
Yes.
Barnett,
Yes.
Bauman,
Yes.
Demacus,
Yes.
Hochhalter,
Yes.
Coop,
Yes.
Offerdahl,
Yes.
Wagonast.
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, the first item on the agenda item number 4 for tonight, is a request by Bradley Weber to subdivide an unplatted portions of the southeast, northeast, southeast of section 34, 15582, to create outlot plats for proposed outlots 22 and 23. This property is zoned RA, agricultural residential, and it's located at 3120 72nd Street Southeast. We'll turn it over to city staff for the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a pretty straightforward one. It's basically a land swap between two neighboring property owners. The vicinity map shows the property in the 2 mile between 37th Avenue Southeast and 38th Avenue with frontage on 72nd Street Southeast. The city lagoons are right to the east of here. So here's an aerial view of the two properties. The larger property that's outlined in red, the guy to the north, since the yellow wants some of that land to be included into his lot. So the subdivision is something like this, where there's an L-shaped tract or upside down or sideways L, however you want to say it, tract that's created, and the red tract retains the minimum required 2 acres for RA zoning, and there is 75 feet of right-of-way dedicated along 72nd for Ward County. So in order to account for the right-of-way dedication, then the plat is measured out, I guess, so that there's 2 acres left over for the one lot, and the larger lot then ends up being 4.69 acres. Both the properties are zoned RA. There's some ag zoning around it. The comp plan doesn't go this far out, doesn't show anything for land use. This is a plat overlaid over the aerial so you can see how everything fits. The existing buildings are, the lot lines are adjusted in the proposal so that all the setbacks fit and everything. Here's a clean copy of the plat. So findings of fact, the applicant has submitted a complete application for an outlot plat, subdivided a portion of unplatted property to create 2 outlots. The request meets all the bulk requirements of the zoning ordinance. That means things like setbacks and lot sizes and whatnot. 75 feet from center line of 72nd is being dedicated as requested by Ward County. The Minot Planning Commission has the authority to hear this case and recommend approval or denial to the city council. This item has been legally noticed and posted, and the public hearing is being held tonight under the requirements of the state and city rules and regulations. Recommendation, staff recommends Planning Commission adopt the staff findings of fact. Further recommends approval of the preliminary outlot plat application subject to, number 1, access points to County Road 72nd Street Southeast must be approved by Ward County Highway Department. Number two, this is something we're adding now into the recommendations, kind of procedural, but basically what it says, I'm not going to read it all, is that before the county recorder can record the plat, the city engineer needs to review it for compliance with all the regs and then sign it and make sure it complies with section or chapter 28, which is a subdivision chapter of the code. So you'll see some of this process stuff included in our recommendations, trying to be more thorough as we move forward. So with that, if anyone has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Any questions for city staff?
I have a quick question. Is 72nd Street considered a county road or a township road?
I have no idea. Lance, is 72nd a township road or a county road?
Mr. Chairman, it is a county road.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, we will open the public hearing on this matter. Are there any individuals present who wish to speak in favor of the application? Is there anybody here wishing to speak either in favor or opposed to the application? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and turn it over to the commission. Is there a motion?
Move to approve based on staff recommendations and findings of facts.
Commissioner Coop moves to approve based on findings, fact, and recommendations. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Offerdahl. We'll call the roll.
Barch,
Yes.
Barnett,
Yes.
Bauman,
Yes.
Demakis,
Yes.
Hochhalter,
Yes.
Coop,
Yes.
Offerdahl,
Yes.
Wagonest.
Yes.
Motion carries. The next item on the agenda, number 5, is an application by FMI Inc. to rezone a portion of Outlot 7 in Section 14, 15583 from R3B, multiple residential medium density, to C2, general commercial, and to subdivide Lot 1 Boyce's Addition, together with a portion of Outlot 7 in Section 14, 15583, to create McHenry Addition Lot 1. This property is located at 304 4th Avenue Northwest. We'll turn it over to city staff for the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here's a vicinity map. This is right on Broadway and 4th Avenue. The big pump station that the city's building for flood control is right south of this. There's an aerial view. This was taken in 2015, so the church that's there, kind of in the middle, has been torn down or moved or something is gone. And then the little building to the left side, I think, was an insurance or a real estate office, and it has not been occupied, but that's going to go away too. And then you'll notice Via View Park there as well. Here's a zoning map, and as we were working on this project, it was kind of a surprise that there's this little sliver of R3B left here that you see. I think everyone thought it was all Zone C2, so we were fortunate enough to catch that in time to actually get it on the agenda, get it advertised and everything. So part of what we're doing tonight is to rezone that sliver from R3B to C2, so the entire parcel is zoned appropriately. You'll see there is some other R2B and R3B and whatnot to the west, but everything along Broadway is pretty much commercial. What's being proposed here is a 7,000 square foot approximately building with like 3 bays, probably 2 restaurants. I'll show you a diagram of it, even though it's not really a requirement for the rezoning, but the future land use map is commercial. The hatching is a conceptual greenway, and that's basically a byproduct of the proximity to the river with floodplain and whatnot. When the flood control is all built, I think this will be protected, but depending on when this is constructed and what's going on with FEMA regulations, obviously the developer will have to comply with whatever FEMA regulations are in place at the time. Here's a diagram of the layout. You see the building, access off 4th, and there's like basically three parking areas, plenty of off-street parking. There's a drive-through lane for the restaurants. McHenry Addition incorporates a sliver to the next to Via View Park and kind of cleans up the boundary somewhat from what was there before with the outlots and Boyce's Addition. So it's basically a one-lot subdivision plat. Findings of fact, it's a complete application submittal. The request is consistent with comp plan. It meets all the bulk requirements of the zoning ordinance, again, setbacks and lot sizes and heights and things like that. Several conditions are attached to address aspects of the project in the recommendations. And again, kind of the catch-all, the Minot Planning Commission has the authority to make a decision on this and send it on to council, and we're holding a public hearing tonight that's been properly posted. It meets all the state and local requirements. So recommendation is to approve the rezoning request and the plat application subject to conditions. Number one, stormwater management plan is required. Number two, a traffic impact study is required. And any improvements that come out of that study will have to be paid for by the developer at the developer's sole expense. Utility connection fees are required. The next one is the existing access point is to be utilized. No new access points on the 4th Avenue will be allowed. Number 5, the development must meet whatever floodplain requirements are in place at the time it's constructed. Number 6, all easements and right-of-way dedications are to be determined before the final plat is recorded. And number 7, park dedication fees in the amount of 0.001% of the total construction cost shall be paid at the time of building permit application. And number 8, this again is the language that talks about Chapter 28 subdivisions, that the city engineer has to review everything and okay it and sign off before it goes to the recorder's office. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Any questions by the commission for staff? Mr. Baumann? Yes, sir.
Just want to double check, Mr. Lang, the conceptual greenway that takes over that C2 spot in the drawing that you submitted with the hatching, that is conceptual only, and there's a lot of give there. Like, it was kind of put into the comp plan not knowing what the final greenway project and flood protection would look like, correct? So that's just we're kind of covering our butts to make sure that in case we end up going in that direction, it's taken care of, but it's not necessarily going to be greenway, or wouldn't be greenway if it wasn't.
Well, I think you're spot on. It is kind of an amorphous blob that kind of winds through and follows the river, so it's not very exact. It's very conceptual, but it establishes the intent, I think, in the comprehensive plan that recognizes we do have a linear greenway that we can develop, and there was the front and center plan and some other planning documents that have been developed that show some concepts of having bike trails and different opportunities along that corridor. So it's very conceptual in the comp plan the way it is now, but we could take that and we do plan to do that at some point. I know there's some citizens that are asking, what's going on with that kind of stuff, because they've been talking about it for years. So that's a good point.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Very good. Seeing none, we will open up the public hearing on the matter. Is there anybody in favor of the application that wishes to be heard? Please come forward. We have a sign-in sheet. Please sign in. State your name for the record.
Sure will. I'm Sean Weeks with Ackerman Asphalt, and I'm representing the applicant, FMI, on this subdivision lot recombination and zone change.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. We're in agreement with staff recommendations, and I think Mr. Lang summarized everything well on this project to date. We'll be coming in ultimately with a stormwater management plan, traffic analysis, and site plan review package, along with the final plat. So I will be happy to entertain questions. But again, just to restate, we're in concurrence with the recommended conditions of approval.
Very good. Any questions from the commission for Mr. Weeks?
Were you surprised about the rezoning sliver too?
Yes. Caught me by surprise there. You did. But thank you.
Mr. Baumann, or Commissioner Baumann, you have a question.
So, Mr. Weeks, this is more just an observation. I love the location of this. I really appreciate the fact that we're building in an area that's densely populated, and we're providing services and restaurants and experiences for everyone on that portion of town. So I give that my thumbs up. I think from the big picture looking at things, there is a part of me that thinks we're missing an opportunity based on the design to really tie this into, I realize, a greenway that we don't know exactly what it will look like, but if we're going to be having 50,000 people accessing this greenway and being able to move east to west across town, I'd love to see, again, I know it's all conceptual, but it would be great to see walking paths to get from the greenway onto this property to access frozen yogurt or ice cream or a meal out with family, or bike paths and bike parking. So I don't expect that right now in the model that you presented, but I would love to just throw this out to the public and say that it would be great if our community started to move to plan for those things and to have those in our conceptual designs of projects moving forward.
Right, no, I agree. I think it's a great idea. It would allow people to pass through the restaurant space and then access via view. So we'll certainly take that under consideration.
Cool, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission? All right, seeing none, just have a seat, Sean, and if we need you, we'll let you know. Is there anybody who would like to speak in opposition to this matter or in favor? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Are there any questions, comments, concerns, or discussion from the commission?
Motion to approve based on staff finding of fact and conditions.
Motion by Commissioner Wagoness to approve based on staff findings of facts and recommendations. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Hochhalter. Please call the roll.
Barch,
Yes.
Barnett,
Yes.
Bauman,
Yes.
Demacus,
Yes.
Hochhalter,
Yes.
Coop,
Yes.
Offerdahl,
Yes.
Wagonest.
Yes.
Motion carries. The sixth item on tonight's agenda is a conditional use permit for outdoor storage in La Violette Edition, is that right?
Yep.
Thank you. Lots 1 and 3 by Midwest Capital Group LLC for indoor self-service storage and outdoor storage of RV, boats, automobiles, and related recreational vehicles and / items. It's currently zoned M1 Light Industrial, and it's located at 3100 County Road 19 South. There is, for the commission, an additional handout that was provided for this matter to you. I'll turn it over to staff for for a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So here's a vicinity map. This is located off of, with frontage on County Road 19 South, which you might also recognize as the old Highway 52. And there's also 31st Street right away on the west side. It's actually 3 different parcels under common ownership. So the aggregate, it's like almost 15 acres, 14.92 acres. And it's been used for commercial or industrial purposes in the past. What the applicant would like to do is use it for storage, as you read, Mr. Chairman, outdoor and indoor, both of which would require a conditional use permit in the zone that it's in. It's an M1 zoning. So here's an aerial view. Again, this is from 2015. So you'll see a building where it's labeled 3100 kind of in the upper left. That's an existing building that the applicant has said probably will be used for offices and administration, maybe some storage type use. There's a smaller building below that to the left. There's actually a storage building without overhead doors and whatnot that'll be used for storage purposes. And then the triangle piece that's kind of all the way to the bottom right is going to be where the stormwater will be. The handout that Mr. Chairman alluded to just a second ago, I actually did put a slide in here, but we'll get to the details on this in a little bit. But the outdoor storage area the applicant wants to pursue initially is kind of shown here in this green arrow. Here's the zoning. The property is zoned M1, and there's some ag to the west and the south. There is R1 directly abutting to the west. There's a house there. And to the south of that, on the other R1 piece, there's an electrical substation. The future land use map is kind of interesting. I don't know why it is, but it's, as I said, it's been used for several years, as far as I know, for like industrial or commercial use. So it's shown on the land use map as a designation of very low density residential, which there is some of that in the area to the west and south, but really doesn't suit this parcel. Although there's not a rezoning or anything before us tonight to really change the land use map. And across the street is Office Business Park, which if you went down there and looked, it's kind of an aggregate mining operation, I'd say much more industrial than Office Business Park. So when we get to the comp plan update, as with many other places around town, we need to take a close look at this area. This is kind of a site plan, landscape plan. It shows several things. It shows kind of a road system internally with the stipples that you see there. And industrial zoning does require some landscaping. It requires street trees. So along the county road and along 31st, there are street trees required. Although on 31st, there are some existing trees that I went and looked at them, and they are big, and I think they would work well for screening if the owner wants to keep them. We would basically give them credit for that. There are some gaps in them, like in 3 different places where there should be a tree planted to fill in. Or alternatively, if the owner doesn't like the existing trees, they could cut them all down and replant them all to new trees so they all look the same. That's kind of the owner's prerogative. There's a note on the landscape plan that and some calculations for parking lot and foundation landscaping. Those two types of landscaping are not required in industrial zoning, so don't need to bother with that. There is, however, a buffer yard required where industrial or commercial abuts to residential, as you all know. So the green hatching is the 20-foot buffer yard with the trees as required by code along the north and the common line, the east line of the house, west line of the property where the house is. But as we extend to the final 300 feet that's shown in red, that's where the electrical substation is, and staff agreed that it probably did make a lot of sense to spend money on a buffer yard there. It's highly unlikely that electrical substation would ever go away and become a house or anything like that. So there's a landscape plan. Also on there is shown up by the buildings to the north is some kind of dashed in buildings that may or may not happen in the future. The owners talked about maybe doing some climate controlled storage in the future. So that would require actually rezoning to C2 and a conditional use permit. If we look back at this slide here, probably something like that would be what would be rezoned because it makes a clean, line to do that. But we're not for sure that that's going to happen. That'll be in the future. So findings of fact. The applicant has submitted a complete application. The proposed use is conditional and is subject to conditions of approval as part of the recommendations. The applicant's request is not consistent with the comp plan. However, this property was previously zoned M1 without amending the comp plan at that time. It has been used for industrial and commercial purposes by prior owners and tenants. So we need to look at that with the next land use update. The request meets all the bulk requirements. The applicant has requested a delay to install screening requirements to the 2020 construction season. We'll talk about that a little more in the conditions. The Minot Planning Commission has the authority to recommend the council and is holding the hearing tonight in conjunction with all requirements of the state and local ordinances. So recommendations. The following conditions. Number 1, the applicant is allowed to use a portion of the site for outdoor storage of vehicles, boats, recreational vehicles, campers, etc. until June 1 of 2020 without required screening, with the understanding that the required screening will be constructed in the 2020 construction season in the form of additional storage buildings along the County Road 19 South frontage, along with screening fences between the buildings. Issuance of a building permit for said storage buildings in the spring of 2020 shall show compliance with this condition. If no such building permit is issued by June 1, the owner shall install an alternative method of screening that is approved by the city planning department, or all the items that are stored outside have to go away until the site can be brought into conformance. So I don't know what the planning commission feels about that. That was kind of what staff came up with for the request to use it for interim storage this fall and winter. Then the second item says we're required a modified site plan that shows where that would happen, which you have on that handout. And then also I showed it as that green triangle on here. Street trees are required along both streets as by code, 1.5 inches based on the 50-foot spacing. And there's some language in here about the existing trees, if they choose to keep them, that would meet requirements along that street as long as they fill in the gaps. The no foundation plantings or interior landscaping is required in the parking lot. A buffer yard is required against the house lot, 20 foot wide with the trees per code. The area against the electrical substation is exempt from that. The stormwater management plan is required, must be approved by the City of Minot Engineering Department and the Ward County Water Board. And access to County Road 19 South must be approved by Ward County Highway Department. And this is language from the conditional use permit section of the code. If substantial construction has not taken place within 1 year from when the permit was granted, it becomes void, except that the planning commission can extend the permit for an additional period as deemed appropriate. And if the permit is discontinued for 6 months, then it becomes void. And then there's a section in here that talks about the amended conditional use permit may be applied for and administered in a manner similar to a new conditional use permit. Shall include reapplications for permits that have expired or been denied, substantial changes in conditions or expenses of use. So one thing that might happen if the applicant decides to pursue the climate controlled storage, a question will be, well, should we amend the existing CUP to kind of roll that all in one, or will there be a brand new one, or will there be two? So that'll be, procedurally something that we would have to consider. So with that description, I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for city staff from the commission? Commissioner Baumann.
Sorry, I feel like I'm the question monster today. I apologize for that. The screening between the property, the 3201, on the map that you gave us, so like the individual property, is that a vegetative screening or is it a screened fence?
Where the green hatchings?
Yep.
Yeah, it's the buffer yard requirement in landscape code is 20-foot wide planted grass and then 1 tree for every 20 lineal feet, 50% of which need to be conifers like pines or spruces or evergreens. And then the remainder can also be conifers, or they could be deciduous or ornamental if they want to provide some variety. Can't park stuff, can't push stuff back into the trees and store it there. It's got to be kept as a buffer yard. Interestingly, the people that have the lot doesn't really show up very good on the photo, but they planted some trees there too. And so one might say, well, it's kind of, they've already got trees, why do we need more? Well, those trees aren't on this property, so there's no control over whether they go away or stay or whatever happens. So the buffer yard is required. We did exempt it along the electrical substation though.
Thanks.
In terms of fencing, I'm sure if there's not one there now, I'm not sure, there'll probably be a security fence. But there's not a requirement for there to be a screening fence necessarily, as long as the buffer yard is put in the way the code requires it.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for staff? All right, seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on this matter. Is there anybody in favor of the application who would like to speak?
Deja vu.
Welcome back, Mr. Weeks.
Hi. Yeah, I too am representing the applicant in this particular case, and we have reviewed the conditions of the recommendation, and we're fine with that. I have Mr. Malcho's here, the owner applicant. If there's questions for him, he can answer those directly. If there are questions for me, I'll be happy to answer those as well.
Thank you, Mr. Weeks. Are there any questions for either the owner or Mr. Weeks? Very good. Seeing none. Anybody else in favor of the application that would wish to speak? Seeing none, is there anybody opposed who wishes to be heard? Very well, we will close the public hearing on this matter and turn it over to the commission for a motion. I'll get the order right this time.
Motion to approve based on staff finding of fact and conditions.
Motion by Commissioner Wagoness to approve based on findings of fact and recommendations. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Commissioner Coop. Any discussion this time?
I have a discussion question,
Yes.
Chairman. So, and this may be best posed as a question to Planner Lang. So looking at the conditional uses that are outlined in the M1 district, which I believe this falls under, section 14-4 talks about in any M1 district, no structure or land shall be used for the following uses except by a conditional use permit. And it describes E, self-service storage facilities, and F, which is an open storage lot. Which would this fall under? Does it fall under the self-service storage facility or an open storage lot?
Well, I would say both. Can it be both?
Okay,
I would say both because they want to do some of each. They want to have buildings that parallel the county road. They're going to start building next spring, and for interior storage, and then the exterior storage for people maybe that don't care as much about keeping their stuff totally inside would be available, and then it would be screened from view once those buildings and fencing are up.
okay, so under E, self-service storage facilities, there's a subsection 3 that says that there's no outside storage to be allowed. So does this fit under the model outlined in subsection F of 14-4, which is regarding open storage lots?
I guess I don't know how to respond to that other than, again, to say that it's kind of a hybrid, so that we're allowing under the conditional use permit both indoor storage and outdoor storage. You have any thoughts on that?
If I may, for the city attorney, then, if I'm following you correctly, and did not read this, essentially a come-and-go self-storage storage facility would not be allowed. If you drop your stuff off and then it sits there for 6 months and you pick it up outdoor storage, that's fine. But the way I'm understanding what you're reading with number 3,
There is a definition for outdoor storage
Yeah.
in our zoning ordinances, and that states that outdoor storage is defined as the keeping in an unroofed area of any goods, junk, material, merchandise, or vehicles in the same place for more than 24 hours. So my concern stems that section 14-4 under conditional uses, subsection E, regarding self-service storage facilities, subsection 3, 2E states no outside storage is allowed. So my question, and that's under the conditional uses that are permitted in an M1 district. So my concern is, are we justifying this entitlement under that subsection, or does it fit under subsection F regarding open storage lots? And I can read that subsection too, unless, does the commission have that?
would you read it?
I can certainly read it. It's lengthy. It states, open storage lots containing track vehicles and/or heavy equipment, products manufactured on site, repaired or made available for sale to the public, and overstock storage for permitted or conditional uses in the M1 district, subject to the following requirements. Then it lists out 4 requirements that are to be met if these open storage lots are to be allowed. The first one is that there's a principal structure on the lot where the open storage area is located, and is that met, Principal Planner Lang?
Yeah, there's a building on there already. There's a couple of them.
Okay, so it appears as though that would be satisfied. The second is that all open storage shall be 100% screened at a minimum of 6 feet in height or to the height of the storage racking up to a maximum of 10 feet at the time of installation from ground level view around the perimeter of the open storage area along all sides visible from the public street, or if abutting a less intense zoning district. Storage units located along abutting property lines of the same or more intensive zoning district and/or use, screening shall not be required. Surrounding topography will be a consideration in meeting that screening requirement. So that was lengthy, but it appears from your report that that condition is made as well, correct?
Well, they're asking for a permission to use part of the site for outdoor storage for an interim period, with the plan being that they're going to provide that continuous buffering through two ways, one along the street with the buildings they're going to build, and then on the other side where the residences are with the buffer yard.
Okay. And 3 also states that sites containing outdoor storage but located within a designated industrial park containing site perimeter screening shall be exempt from the individual site screening requirements. Is this inside a designated industrial part so as to exempt
No.
them from that? Okay. Outdoor storage area also, this is the 4th condition. Outdoor storage areas using gravel or other crushed and/or recycled asphalt, concrete, or gravel shall comply with the requirements of section 23-6 E and F of this code.
Right, which is not, the reference isn't right, but if you go to the off-street parking at the very end, it's actually 23-8. I think, hold on. I don't know, maybe it is 23-6.
E and F.
23-6F, yeah. And when we had our DRT meeting with the applicant, we discussed the paving alternatives that could be pursued. And correct me if I'm wrong, but we talked about using recycled rock, concrete, or gravel for the outdoor storage areas. The owner intends to pave that existing building that's going to be used for offices and whatnot, is going to have paved parking for customers and whatnot, but where they're going to park the boats and all that stuff will be like crushed asphalt or recycled concrete or something like that. That would be a hard surface, but not a paved, not Portland cement concrete or not bituminous asphalt.
Okay, so it will meet that condition for an open storage lot?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioners, any further discussion? Seeing none, call the roll.
March,
Yes.
Barnett,
Yes.
Bauman,
Yes.
Demacus,
Yes.
Hochhalter,
Yes.
Coop,
Yes.
Offerdahl,
Yes.
Wagonest.
Yes.
Motion carries. Brings us to item number 7, which I believe is our last item for evening. This is a zone change request by Eugene Kraft for a change from R1 Single Family Residential to MH Manufactured Home to locate a manufactured home on property located at 3465 47th Street Southeast and legally described as Eastside Estates, Lot 7, Block 2. Turn it over to staff for the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So here we have a vicinity map that shows the location of this lot in Eastside Estates. It's down south on Highway 52, heading towards Logan and Belleville and whatnot. and the lot shown in red there. The request is to rezone this from R1 to MH, manufactured home. The applicant would like to put a manufactured home on the lot. Here it is, an aerial view of the lot itself. In 2013, when the ordinances were updated, manufactured homes became only allowable in MH zoning or as a temporary portable classroom or as a night watchman's quarters. So they're pretty limited into where they can go in the community. Now, in the past, that wasn't always the case, especially after the flood. But as you can see with the zoning map here, East Side Estates is all zoned R1, which is single-family residential. However, there are several manufactured homes out there already, which I'll talk more about here in a minute. Also, kind of problematic in this case is that the comprehensive plan doesn't address this area in terms of giving us future guidance for land use. So I thought I had a slide in here of that, but I guess I don't. But it basically doesn't go that far. And so one could assume, well, all of this is shown yellow, so that's single family, so the comp plan should say this or that, but we don't know that for sure. There's no direction provided. And again, it's not purely stick-built houses. There are manufactured homes, several of them out there. In April of this year, the applicant came to the building department and said that the intent was to put a manufactured home on this lot. He was advised at that time that the zoning wasn't proper for that, and he proceeded to work on it anyway. So a stop work order was issued, and there's a court date pending. In the interim, his son-in-law came to the city and in a good faith effort to try to resolve the discrepancies, asked what could be done, and we discussed several options with him. One being a conditional use permit. Well, this manufactured home is not a conditional use in any zones. And then we talked about variance. It's not really a hardship. So rezoning was really the direction that everybody agreed upon. And there's two different methodologies discussed. One being rezoning a single parcel to MH to allow the manufactured home to be there. And secondly, to try to convince other people within East Side Estates, especially ones that maybe had a manufactured home there already, however it got there, to actually be in on the application. And so staff offered to not charge rezoning fees to every owner. If there were multiple owners, then we put them all in one application. The son-in-law was interested in pursuing a petition to try and build support for placing this manufactured home. And when the petition came in, it was worded such that whoever signed it didn't protest the applicant putting the mobile home on the one lot. So it wasn't designed to have multiple lots included. It's just basically a question of rezoning the lot in question. So there are several out there already. Here's some pictures of them. There's 6 there. There's another 6 there. And there may be more. There may be, I thought there was 13, but there's 12 here for sure. Here's the manufactured home that the applicant would like to put on the lot. It's sitting out there waiting to be moved, depending on what happens here with this or if it goes to court. So the petition, I drew this graphic up, and the numbers that came out of this petition were that 60 people signed the petition, and then out of the number of lots that are shown with this light blue boundary, then there's basically 90 parcels in there. 43 parcels are represented as signing the petition, and 47 are not. And by percentage of lots, that's 47% signed, 52 did not. By land area, not including the right-of-way, 26.33 acres on the petition, 28.75 not. Now, it's pretty close to an even split, almost 50-50. But petitions are, perhaps a valuable tool, but you have to keep in mind some things. First of all, it's impossible to know the ones that didn't sign it if they were asked to sign it? Were they not home? Did they not sign it because they don't care, they're neutral? Or did they sign it because they're really vehemently opposed to this? I mean, there's no way to tell those kind of things. Also, the people that did sign it, in some cases, they were husband and wives, so some parcels got signed or twice, in significant others, boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever. Also, there was some of them, it appears, are not owner occupied. There must be rentals because our owner information doesn't match the signatures that are on the page. And there's not a lot of that, but some of it. And so you can see in the diagram here, all the green properties signed, the blank didn't. The blue properties are people that own multiple parcels. The red property is where the manufactured home would like to be put if the applicant can get this done. And the orange is actually other property that is already owned by the applicant. The pink stars are the existing manufactured homes that exist out there today. You can see there's some basically right across the street, a few down the street, and then there's several that are quite a ways away. So this is a pretty large area, and you know, it's hard to say exactly what the petition means, although there is obviously some people that are okay with having this moved in there. But we did some research to try and get a better handle on this. How do these existing manufactured homes get out there, for one thing? And looking through the planning database, there were conditional use permits or special use permits issued like in 1979, 81, 87, 93, and 99 for some reason. There's no way to tell the justification, but it did say conditional use permit to locate a manufactured home. It was approved by council. And then in the building records, in the building department, there's a number of replacements. So in the non-conforming chapter of the code, there's a special section that says something to the effect that if you have a non-conforming manufactured home, which would be the case here because it's zoned R1, but it's a manufactured home, they can be replaced with a different manufactured home as long as they're of the same size and the new manufactured home is moved in within 30 days of the old one going away. And so there's several instances of that happening with the building department in 1999, 03, 05, 06, 2010, 2012. So we have evidence that those were legally out there. I don't know for sure how some of them got there to begin with, but they were replaced legally. So again, we don't have a strictly R1 situation here. We've got a mixture of uses. Then I talked to the county, and the county planner told me that Eastside Estates was platted by the county in 1962, long before it was in our jurisdiction. And it's unclear exactly when, but around 1975, the city took it in. But when the county platted it, they zoned it R3, which is a single-family residential county zoning district. And the county doesn't distinguish between manufactured home, modular homes, stick-builts. They're all considered single-family homes. So for a period of time, roughly 62 to 75, they were allowed to be out there by right. When the city took it over, we zoned it. I'm assuming the closest thing to their R3 was our R1, but our R1 doesn't allow manufactured homes. So the ones that were out there became legal non-conforming, thus subject to this replacement thing that they can take advantage of. So that's the history. Without clear direction from the comp plan, with some different land uses and things happening out there, it's not a clear-cut deal. People might bring up spot zoning. One way that could have maybe helped with that a little bit is if the petitioners would have gone around to the other houses and got more than one lot to ask for the manufactured zoning. I'm not an attorney, but in my planning background, what I understand spot zoning to be is not necessarily illegal, but if it's contested in court, it can be found to be illegal. Basically, it's the argument is that you're singling out a single small parcel and treating it preferentially or different from what's around it, and it's not in character with the neighborhood. It's not in compliance with the comp plan, and again, the comp plan doesn't give us direction here. So I'm not sure that spot zoning applies or not. I mean, if you think about it, really all rezonings is spot zoning. It's just how big is the spot, right? So with all that evidence, I guess our, staff kind of struggled with this one because it's a little bit unique, but I think we're hoping that between the petition and then if any people are here either to speak in opposition or in favor of this, that will help the commissioners decide. I got one email from a person, actually that was directly next door to the east of the subject property, Chris Herringer, Heringer. He said he couldn't attend the meeting, so I'll read this into the record. I'm writing this letter to oppose the change to the single-family residential district to a manufactured home district, as I will not be able to attend the meeting. One of the biggest reasons that I moved out there was that there would not be any more mobile homes put in the neighborhood. As you know, mobile homes do not retain their value, but also bring down property value to the adjacent property. As I am the property right next, in capital letters, to the proposed change, Eugene Kraft, the owner, has told me that he will also be raising the height of the property in question with the large, in capital letters, amount of dirt he is in place. By doing so, he will more than likely flood me or send excessive water my way, as this is the natural flow of the landscape. I also have a concern about the septic system as to which way it will flow, ? I have not seen nor heard of any plans being approved for it. My biggest concern about the project is that he will turn it into another rental property, as he has done with his other property, and I've seen many families come and go. With the housing market as it is at this point in time, I fear that it will set empty for some time and not be kept up. And also, his foundation on the project has not been inspected. It may not be up to code, as he has told me to my face that he will do whatever he likes and no one will stop him. I fear that he may not put the best possible building practices in place to make this home last as long as it should. Again, I would like to let you know I am strongly opposed, in capital letters, to the change. If Mr. Kraft would like to move in and live in his mobile home, there are plenty of mobile home parks that he can do so. Please do not make the rest of the citizens of Eastside Estates subject to changes of one man, because, as you know, if you do for one, you must do for all. Thank you for your time. Chris Herringer, 4801 35th Avenue, Southeast Minot. So as I read this, the question tonight is the rezoning, and some of the issues that Mr. Herringer brings up certainly are concerns of his, but whether or not it's a rental or owner occupied, the city doesn't control that. Whether or not it's built properly, we do control. If this zoning were approved and a building permit could be issued to move it in there, the building department will inspect the foundation, utility hookups, all the stuff. Engineering will take a look at the stormwater flow and make sure that it's not compromising anything. So a lot of the things he's bringing up, although they may be real concerns to him, and rightly so, they would be covered in the process. So the question about zoning and whether or not it affects property values, I'm not an assessor, I don't know. But the question tonight is really the rezoning, whether it's appropriate or not. So with all that information, I'd be glad to, well, I guess I should.
What's the recommendation?
I should get on to the end here and go through this. Okay, findings of fact. The applicant has submitted a complete application for rezoning. The status of the request cannot be determined for consistency with the comp plan because no future land use category is shown. Number 3, its location is within the planning area of the 2-mile ETJ. The surrounding land has been previously subdivided. When this subdivision was originally platted by Ward County, manufactured housing was an allowable use. Number 5, when the city of Minot incorporated these properties in the 2-mile, the zoning of the land was established as R1, single family. Manufactured housing is not allowed in the city of Minot R1. Number 7, there are at least 12 existing manufactured homes in the petition area. Number 8, research shows that manufactured homes were allowed in the subdivision what is under the jurisdiction of Ward County. 9, the applicant has submitted a petition in favor of allowing a manufactured home on the lot in question as part of the rezoning application. Number 10, the proposed rezoning from R1 to MH constitutes rezoning of a single parcel in the neighborhood containing 90-plus lots. They're all consistently zoned R1. Staff cannot determine if the proposed rezoning will affect property values of the area or be detrimental to the general public interest and the purposes of this ordinance because roughly 47% of property owners within about a 1,000-foot radius have executed a petition to not protest this rezoning request. At the time this report is written, there have been no phone calls or letters received by the city in opposition. However, 52 property owners within the same area did not sign the petition. It is unclear whether all the property owners were offered a chance to sign or not sign, and whether or not people that did not sign are opposed or simply neutral to the rezoning request. Number 11, the applicant has disclosed the purpose for which such property is sought to be used if this rezoning is successful for placement of a manufactured housing unit. Number 12, again, as usual, the Minot Planning Commission has the authority to make recommendation to council, and this has been adequately noticed, and we're holding a public hearing tonight. So the recommendation is to adopt staff findings, consider the evidence here, and and we're suggesting to approve this, requesting or pending the results of the public hearing, which is obvious that you want to take into account the results of the public hearing, but because of the petition and everything else, the opposition or in favor of, I think is important in this case. So if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Any questions for staff from the commission?
I got a question.
Commissioner Offerdall.
Mr. Lang, has there been an application for a building permit at all throughout this process?
Not to my knowledge, no, there hasn't.
So, but that would be required in the future moving forward?
It would have to be rezoned for a manufactured
Right.
home to be on there, and then they'd have to get permits and inspections.
So any foundation or anything would then be inspected before the house is put on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lang, I just want to be clear on your previous statement. These 12 existing structures that are out there now have not been permitted or granted use from Planning Commission or the City Council since essentially probably the 90s based on some various timeframes. And what's there now are replacements of probably original non-conforming uses. Am I understanding that portion of your report correctly?
Yes, although it's hard to say for sure because there was some activity around the flood time too.
Okay.
And there's these conditional use permits that go all the way back to the 90s. It's unclear how they were justified moving them in and out, but there has been in the documentation more recently through the early 2000s and up to right before the flood, there were several of them that were replaced and legally through that non-conforming clause.
Okay. But but the zoning, every lot out there is zoned residential though, currently, correct? Thank you. Okay. Any other questions from the commission? All right, seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anybody who wishes to speak in favor of this application? Please come forward. If you would please sign in and then just state your name for the record.
Mr. Chairman, Commission, thank you for having me here this evening. My name is Paul Wilkins. I'm the representative for the property owners of the application, Mr. and Mrs. Kraft. I come to you this evening in agreement with the Planning Commission's recommendation of approval to the Commission to move this application forward to City Council for subsequent reading and voting after determination of public hearing. I would like to make some statements and comments with regards to the Planning Commission's report as it's stated to you. The email that Mr. Lang read, I appreciate you sharing that with us, sir. That's the first I've heard of it, first I've been aware of it. I have approached this gentleman on numerous occasions to ask for his input directly as it relates to the petition and the application of the property owners. Every time any conversation occurred between myself and him, he denied or was unwilling to submit to any kind of signature or opinion towards the petition, which then in turn left me to believe that it really didn't matter to him. Like for it to be noted to the Commission, the gentleman in the email lives in a manufactured home on said lot. The report indicated 12, 13 manufactured housing units currently in the neighborhood. There are some that were omitted from the slide that you see there, including the one from the gentleman who submitted the email, as well as some additional ones across the street adjacent from the lot being asked to be rezoned. We specifically asked for individual rezoning because we didn't want to put ourselves in a position of encouraging or implying that in order for our rezoning request to be heard and approved, that the rest of the neighborhood had to comply and request rezoning as well. What one does with their own land within accordance to the law should be their choice. We don't want to impose that decision upon anybody. We're asking for ourselves. With respect to the use of the home, while it's not relevant to this commission, I will state to you that we'll be a primary residence. Both my mother and father-in-law are ailing in health. They currently live in a split-level home, which has 3 levels. Their health no longer allows them to get up and down those stairs safely. This unit is all on one level and is in the best interest of their safety and enjoyment for the duration of their natural life. Those are the comments that I have to make to this board. I do request that, you give consideration to our application, grant us an approval to be able to move this application on to City Council for further discussion.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions from the commission? Yes, Commissioner Wagonist.
Paul, it was Paul, correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
Paul,
Okay.
I'm just curious, of the 52 properties that did not sign the petition, were they approached or were there conversations with those, or?
I'll be frank with you, sir. Of the 52 that didn't sign, I simply didn't have time to get to those places and knock on the door. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a professional. I have a 40-hour job, a wife and children. So for me to come from Bismarck up to Minot on a regular basis and knock on every door in Eastside Estates simply was not within the structure of time afforded to me. We did approach the individuals that we thought were within proximity to the lot being asked to be rezoned, because obviously those are going to be the ones who are most directly affected by the rezoning and by the placement of the manufactured home.
Thank you. Any further questions from the commission? All right, seeing none, just have a seat, and if we need you back, we'll let you know.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else who wishes to speak either in for or against of this matter, please come forward. Same as before, if you would, just please sign in and state your name. and,
Horace Brown.
Please give us your opinion, sir.
I live right next to Chris Herringer. And I understand their concerns and comments, and everybody wants to change things, but common practice for everything he does out there, there's been a dirt pile in that lot for about 15 feet high ever since the flood, full of weeds. Nobody's taking care of it. Bunch of junk vehicles, push them right up against the lot line, and you got to look at it. Well, if it was a nice lot and common sense and not argument, and Gene did come over and ask me to sign that, and I told him no, I wasn't for it. And I'm sorry I didn't see you there. When he was running around getting signatures, I don't know you. I've lived there my whole life. My folks lived across from the park up there my whole life. Gene had a house up there, raised it up years ago, mess. Moved across the street, wanted to change the zoning laws years ago to bring the houses in from the base, which they live in now, and one's a rental. Didn't paint that rental for 10 years. Looked horrible. The guy renting it this year, before he moved out, said, I'm moving out unless you paint it. So he got the neighbor over there and they painted it, and it does look good now. Okay, now the house is for sale, he moved out. The guy wanted to buy the house. Gene wanted more money. That guy, they argued back and forth, the guy moved out. I'm pretty proud of my neighborhood. Years ago, it was a mobile estate place. So when you asked how the mobile homes got there, they changed that years ago to R1 family zoning. So we didn't have mobile homes being pulled in and out. And yes, you are right, there is a lot of manufactured homes out there after the flood and after stuff. And it does state in the covenants, you have 30 days to pull it out and put something new in that everybody agrees with. That's nice. And everybody has complied with that. You go out there and you drive around and you look at people's lots and you go drive behind where I'm talking about. Go out there and look at that. And I want to see if any one of you want to live beside that. Everything that's happened out there, he has had no permits, no nothing, got away with it. Dirt Hill's been there for years. People have complained. Well, people get tired of talking that nobody does nothing. And pretty soon they give up. You can kind of see that. Nobody here. You didn't get those signatures because they didn't sign up, because they gave up on you people. He always gets what he wants, and we end up looking at the mess. And I'm not trying to be ungrateful to his wife, because I think his wife's a wonderful person. I know her personally. But the other 55 people, to answer your question, is there. You want to go out and talk to them and ask door to door? You ask them. See if I'm not telling you the truth. We don't want a zoning law change. We went through that years ago when this place was built and trailers were drug in and out of there, messes left all over. And we don't want to go through that no more. It's simple as that. I mean, if you can go out there and justify and drive out there yourself, you people, and look at what's there and what's around his property and all that stuff, and if that's what you want, then I guess it's time for me to sell. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? All right, any further comments on the application? For or against? Very well, seeing none, we'll turn it over to the commission. Is there, excuse me, is there a motion from any of the commissioners?
I'll make a motion to deny the application.
Motion by Commissioner Wagoness to deny the application. Second by Commissioner Severson. Is there any discussion? Barsh. Sorry. I'm getting my map down here. Is there any discussion? Very well. Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Barch,
Yes.
Barnett,
Yes.
Bauman,
Yes.
Demacus,
Yes.
Hochhalter,
Yes.
Coop,
Yes.
Offerdahl,
Yes.
Wagonast.
Yes.
Motion denying the application passes. That is the end.
Do we need any kind of justification or reason for motion like that?
Microphone.
Because it's just because it's not for the neighborhood, or is it,
Turn on their mic.
or else do they need to have some kind of findings or anything for the motion, or is it
I think
okay
that-
just to deny it?
It can certainly be added, but the motion was to deny, so it would have been based upon the evidence presented to the council here,
Okay.
the commission.
I just checking.
Okay. Thank you. There being no further business, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.